Suffering from dry, tired, irritated eyes? Don't let dry eyes win. Use Sustain Pro. It hydrates, restores, and protects dry eyes for up to 12 hours. Sustain Pro. Triple action dry eye relief.
Want to elevate your travel experience? Here's how. With a Delta SkyMiles Reserve American Express card, you can relax before your flight in the Delta Sky Club with up to 15 visits per medallion year. And now through July 15th, 2026, you can earn up to 125,000 bonus miles, so you're closer to your next adventure. The Delta SkyMiles Reserve card. Check out the new design at www.delta.com/Spotify. Minimum spending requirements and terms apply.
Hello, folks. I'm Larry Kudlow. This is the Larry Kudlow Show. I don't know. We'll straighten this thing out in a minute. The thing that hooks into the switchboard. Anyway, you can hear me partly, or I can hear you partly. And it's great to be with you. We'll get the equipment straightened out in just a minute. By the way, you can live stream us over the internet. If you care to, make it easier. LarryKudlowShow.com, LarryKudlowShow.com. You can hear us all across the country, around the world, throughout the solar system, including the Milky Way. There we go. I think we're going to hit. Now we got one. Let's see. We got the whole thing. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, we got it. Okay. I knew we could do it. Thank you, Elias. Thanks for bearing with me, folks. So we're all set up now. And as I said, LarryKudlowShow.com, LarryKudlowShow.com. You can hear us all across the country, around the world, throughout the solar system, including the Milky Way. And, by the way, please join us during the week. Fabulous Fox Business, 4 to 5 p.m. every day, Monday through Friday. Name of the show is Kudlow. If you can't make it at 4 for some crazy reason, just text your favorite 9-year-old, and she will show you how to DVR the show. Boy, that sounds great. Thank you, Elias. All right. I'm going to begin with some more on Mandami. Been talking about Mandami's anti-Semitism, his socialism, this baloney about rent controls, which will completely wrecked the city of New York. And the fact that, we're bleeding here because of what Mandami is doing. We are bleeding. President Trump took off after him pretty tough yesterday. I enjoyed it thoroughly. The president was in great form. Over at the Faith and Freedom Conference, my pal Ralph Reed's group, been around a long time. Trump just tore into the anti-Semitic mayor, Zoran Mandami. Socialism, communism, and anti-Semitism, they go together. Communism and anti-Semitism have always been close cousins down through the years. Close cousins. And Democrats don't seem to have, regular Democrats, whoever they are, Schumer, Jeffries, I don't know. The only guy I see knocking him out is Fetterman on the front page of the New York Post today, or at least the lead story on the website. Good for John Fetterman. Mr. Trump said basically American greatness has been forged by people of faith. All people of faith. America is one nation under God, and we're not going to change that, the president said. He said he'll defend Christians and all Americans of faith 100%. And referred to his executive orders signed early in his second term, reaffirming the fight against anti-Semitism or any other bigotry or persecution of people of faith. This is so important. President argued that Democrats are trying to destroy traditional ways of life. He singled out Senator Chuck Schumer, who really is the leading Jewish office holder in the country, as the Democratic minority leader in the Senate. Schumer's afraid to fight. Here's Trump said, I watch Schumer. He's afraid to fight. I watch guys that are pretty normal and guys that we oppose. They're afraid to fight. The Democrats have taken a tremendous turn left. And as for the Mondami Democratic Socialists of America, Mr. Trump called them godless communists and chided more traditional Democrats for not fighting this. And I'll quote him again directly. Quote, so they're turning communists themselves, becoming a communist party. These are not social democrats. They're hardcore, godless communists. They're godless communists. All communists are godless. They don't believe in God. This is the most serious threat to our country since its existence. Good for him. Well put, Mr. President. Well put. I mean, actually, if I had my druthers, I hope that the president pounds even harder and more directly on the anti-Semitism of the Mondami crowd, which I believe is the animating and motivating and uniting message of Mondami's socialism. That's right. It animates this group. All they talk about is Palestine. All they talk about is hatred for the state of Israel. This crazy woman, Chevalier, who won her primary. She may be elected. I don't know that she can be sworn in, by the way, but that's a separate issue. The day after the awful massacre, the Hamas massacre of Israelis and others in 2023, October 7th, that next day, she's organizing a pro-Palestinian rally at Columbia University, the most disgusting thing in New York City, the home of most Jewish people in the world outside of Israel. Mondami himself goes out of his way over and over again to make anti-Semitic remarks, not show up for Jewish events, talking about Palestine. He doesn't have anything to do with foreign policy. That's the irony. Mayor of New York, who cares what he says? He wants... He's going to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu, which he didn't. It's all of a piece. It's all of a piece. It animates the Democratic Socialists of America. And the sheer hatred and bigotry toward Jewish people and the state of Israel is the most corrosive and corrupt stain on this group, and frankly, the people that voted for them. And the great risk here is that this hatred and bigotry will spread through the rest of the country. In other words, it doesn't end in New York City, and we've already seen this. Crazy people running for the Senate in Maine, crackpots running for the Senate in Michigan, socialists running for mayor in L.A., socialist mayor of Seattle, Chicago. Thing about bigotry and hatred is once it aims at one group, it can metastasize and infect many other groups as well. Believe me, Jewish people today can be Catholics and Presbyterians. It will be blacks and browns. It will be law-abiding immigrants. Who knows? There's no point. And as Mark Thiessen said, Mark Thiessen's a very good, he'll be on the show. He's coming up at the half hour as for our political discussion this morning. But the fact is, communism and anti-Semitism are close cousins. They always have been close cousins. And you look at their platform, I mean, and their platform is, of course, it's socialism or communism. And the U.S. Senate stacked the Supreme Court, nationalized large companies, open borders, defund the military, defund the police. This crazy rent control story here in New York City, we'll talk more about that in a few moments. High taxes, wealth confiscation, punishing success. The state is everything. That's why it's godless. The state is God in their view. Or it is a bastardized version of Islam, radical Islam, of a kind we've seen in this country attacking us, radical Islam. Communism and anti-Semitism are very close cousins. I'll just say, I've been talking about this on the Fox show all week, but I want to raise it here. We have to stop this. We have to save America from the scourge of Mondamiism, it's anti-Semitism, it's socialism or communism, it's hatred of America. They don't like America. Again, this crazy woman, Chevalier, wiping her dirty hands on the American flag. Terrific. Just terrific. People have to stand up. I think it is tragic that somebody like Chuck Schumer, whom I know, we disagree on many, many political things, but I still would like to hear him come out full blast against Mondamiism and its anti-Semitism and its socialism. If you're listening, Senator, come on. Get your backbone going. The only one I've heard really come out and attack them is John Fetterman, the senator from Pennsylvania, Democratic senator from Pennsylvania. And, of course, the Republicans have got to hammer away on this. The GOP, the party of freedom, the party of free enterprise, the party of economic opportunity, the party of tolerance, the party of faith. And I'm certain the GOP will use so many of these statements from Mondami and his followers. They'll run them up the flagpole during the election. Millions, tens, hundreds of millions of dollars will be spent. This stuff has to be stopped. We do not want it to metastasize. The anti-Semitism is the most corrosive part. It will ruin the city of New York. It is so demoralizing. And it is so cruel. But if it's going to become the tail that wags the dog of the Democratic Party, it will be most unfortunate. But I fear that Mondami and his socialists and his anti-Semites are now the driving force in Democratic Party politics. That is going to be a tragedy. We will talk more about this over the course of the show. I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back. So I'll say it again. Anti-Semitism is the root of Mondami socialism, and it's destroying New York City. And I'll say this again. The Mondami AOC anti-Semitic tail is now wagging the entire Democratic Party dog. And I'll say it again, that anti-Semitism is the near cousin to communism and socialism. And we're stuck with all of it. And men and women of good faith got to stand up and fight this in both political parties. So far, the Democrats won't, with the exception of John Fetterman, senator from Pennsylvania. And, of course, this socialist platform is unbelievable and will drive New York even further down with poverty. Interestingly, on this rent control now, the rent freeze is very interesting. Mondami threatened this during the campaign, and I guess he's going to go for it. The question is, will the rent freeze hold up? Well, there'll be lawsuits. But Trump took off after this. I mean, look, the Trump companies, they've been in the rental markets for a long time, not anymore, but certainly the president understands this as well as anybody. 14,000, the Trumps owned at one point 14,000 rent-stabilized apartments. But here's what he said at the Faith and Freedom Coalition yesterday in Washington. What the mayor doesn't say is that these buildings will soon turn into ghettos and slums, and that everybody will continue leaving New York. And as this spreads throughout the country, very much like an uncontrollable form of cancer, the country itself will be taken down. It will be third world, strictly third world. Look, you put these rent controls on, nobody can invest any money in keeping these apartments going. That's the whole problem. The government can't do it. The landlords, the owners, have to make a buck, even if it's a short buck, a small buck. And what's happening in New York is, there's stories all over how these rent-controlled apartments, rent-freeze apartments, they don't even have any energy. The water, hot and cold water. It's impossible to live there. The paint peels. And no one wants to fix anything because you can't even charge a little bit of a profitable increase. Socialists don't understand this. They don't understand profit. They don't understand investment returns. But they don't understand how this hurts the very lower income, poor people they think they're helping. They're killing them. They won't let them live in decent places because of these silly rent controls and freezes. That's why socialism fails. It fails every time. I'm Kudlow. We'll stop now. We're going to do some politics. More on this on the other side of the break. Mondamiism and socialism and anti-Semitism. What a grim discussion. So we'll continue our discussion. Mondami AOC, anti-Semitic tail, now wagging the entire Democratic Party dog. Communism and anti-Semitism are close cousins. All of this, by the way, from our Fox Business Show, 4 to 5 p.m. every night. You can read this stuff in the New York Sun, by the way. I'll put a little plug in for the New York Sun. And my belief that anti-Semitism is the root of Mondami socialism. I know the socialism economics are bad enough, but in a sense, that's too easy. What makes this just awful, damaging, corrosive, demoralizing, is the anti-Semitism, hatred of Jewish people, bigotry.
This is going to be an extremely busy month. I have to watch 104 soccer games, follow the pregame, the postgame, yell useless opinions at the TV. It's a lot. So I knew that when it comes to screening for colon cancer, the choice was clear. The Cologuard Plus test. It can be used at home and can only take 15 minutes, so I can do it during halftime and not miss any action. If you are 45 or older and at average risk, ask your healthcare provider about screening for colon cancer with the Cologuard test. You can also request a prescription at Cologuard.com.
This episode is brought to you by Fox One. Watch all 104 matches of the FIFA World Cup live in 4K for just $19.99 a month with 3 days free. Build your own multi-view, choose up to 3 streams, and follow player spotlights. Stay on top of every moment with live stats, highlights, and instant replays. The FIFA World Cup, streaming live on Fox One. Offers are subject to change. See fox.com for complete terms and conditions.
I wrote a little song to remind you, Choice Hotels get you more of the experiences you value. The Cambria Hotel's got it all. A rooftop bar, have a ball. Bring a date, your squad, or even your mom. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
And we're live from the living room as Doug eyes up the matchday spread. He's reaching for the buffalo wing. Perfect! Hang on, what's this? Oh, he's gone for a can of Pepsi too! Incredible! What a finish! Sensational combination! Look at the delight on his face. There's no doubt about it. It just tastes better. Match days deserve Pepsi. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a pack of Pepsi Zero Sugar for today's match. It's poetry in motion.
Which I think is the animating driving force behind these people. They talk about it all the time. Anyway, we're going to talk to my pal David Webb, Fox News contributor to the David Webb Show on Sirius XM, longtime friend. We have an APB out for Mark Thiessen. Are we calling him, or maybe Susan will find him? I don't know. David, welcome, my friend.
Anytime.
You know, Thiessen made a good point the other night on the show, on the TV show, about how socialism is the near cousin to anti-Semitism. Very interesting point throughout history. But in general, I don't know which is worse. I think, to be honest with you, the hatred and the bigotry of anti-Semitism is worse. I loved what the president said yesterday at Ralph Reed's conference. And, hatred spreads, David. It spreads. I mean, it just metastasizes and undermines all of our values. I mean, that's the problem.
Beyond the hatred, there's the death count, the death toll that comes with both of those systems. There's a history that people don't often pay attention to, Larry, and that's in the Middle East. One, you've had Nazis who tried to work with the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem and others from World War II forward. But there is also a history of socialism and communism that worked its way into some quarters of the Middle East. They combine. It's a red, green, and now blue, because that's the Democrat color, but it's a red, green, and blue axis of evil. The anti-Semitism is worse in a way because of its effect in many ways, but in a way because its effect on a group of people and the percentage that have been murdered by different regimes and have been cast aside by many because of it is worse. The death toll of communism, even in its since the Soviet Union and Mao and Venezuela, Cuba, Cambodia, and all the others, yes, that's over 100 million according to good estimates. But the percentage of Jews that have been murdered as a result of hatred is significantly more. And to Mamdani, he preys on it. I watch, like you do, the different things he says and how he says it, the groups he plays to, and the people he puts in place in his administration. And I agree with you, and this is based on just the analysis of these people. The anti-Semitism is the core of this because that's more important right now. In the end, should either one of them win or become the leading whatever, well, the biggest failure, I guess is the way to put it, they will eat each other because they can't coexist. You can't have a theocratic and a politically autocratic regime working together.
You know, it's the historical context is very interesting. It goes back to Nazism and it goes back to Mein Kampf, which became a favorite of Palestinians down through the years. You remember our pal George Gilder? You know George Gilder. He's written a lot about this. And, Hitler dies, and, of course, thankfully, but Hitler's book, Mein Kampf, lives on and becomes a favorite of Palestinians. a perennial bestseller in the Arab world. And, of course, it's virulent anti-Semitism, but this stuff is picked up by the Osama bin Ladens of the world. Ahmadinejad, the old Iranian president, used to talk and quote from it. And that's where your socialism comes in from, Nazism and socialism. So it's just like history repeats itself. Look, I don't want any of it. The point is we don't want any of this stuff. And
it destroys society entirely. And people can look this up. It's very easy to find on the web. The Grand Mufti of Jerusalem during World War II, working with the Nazis, formed the first Nazi brigade in the Middle East. And out of that, by the way, you bring up Ahmadinejad as a point to note, and a lot of scholars agree on this. When you look at the Iranian army, whether the IRGC element, the Al-Quds force, or the Artesh, and you look at how they march, look very closely, and then put them side by side with Nazis, because that's what was imposed in the Middle East and built from there to build these brigades. So when you see that, you see not just the historical context, but an eerie similarity between them that carries on to today.
So where's the leadership of the Democratic Party? Where's Chuck Schumer? Trump mockingly calls him a Palestinian, but reality is, he's a lifelong career politician who is of the Jewish faith, and he is saying he has no criticism of Mandami and the anti-Semitic followers. Now, the Socialist Party, I don't know, the Democratic Party is becoming socialist. Okay, that's bad enough. But the hatred and bigotry of anti-Semitism is even worse. It spreads. Look, we fought hard for civil rights for blacks and browns and Jews and everybody, David. I was always part of the Jack Kemp wing of the Republican Party.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that this so offends me about this anti-Semitism and the fact that people aren't fighting it. Kemp would have gone crazy if he were around today. What's wrong with
Schumer? He bears examination in this way, and I've watched him for a long time. And Chuck Schumer is he's a career coward and a career politician in one. He does whatever keeps him there. It's an amoral approach. I have a lot of friends, as you do, in the Jewish community, senior people who've been there a long time, and they see Schumer for what he is, that he is literally not a Jew before he is a politician. And you don't need to choose your religion or your ethnic heritage over everything else. But what he is a politician who will do whatever he wants. He's a coward. He's a liar. His contradictions don't matter because they're all lies. It's just tracking how he does things. And in this case, he needs to play with the Mamdani, Chevalier, Avila wing. When it was his turn back, you remember this decades ago, he was with Charlie Rangel. And when it was the time, he was with Jerry Nadler. Schumer does that. And that points to why socialism and anti-Semitism can be more prevalent in the Democrat Party, because that reflects a lot of their politicians. Whatever comes along in the moment, they do it, then they throw it under the bus for the next thing. We saw Barack Obama do that. Very well done, cleverly, politically. I'll give him credit for that. But he threw his white Kansas grandparents under the table, his white mother, under the table in the Philadelphia speech to go play footsie with Jim Clyburn to get the Carolina votes together and get the black vote in line for his first election run. This is what they do, and it is something that is prevalent in politics on the left side. I'm not saying there haven't been elements on the right. I like you. Jack Kemp was a great man.
Let me bring in Mark Titz. By the way, I just want, as an aside, I like Charlie Rangel. He was a friend of mine.
He was likable.
He did some very good things. And by the way, I know Chuck Schumer down through the years. I know him. We disagree on politics, but I don't know why he doesn't want to speak up. We had this APB and found Mark Thiessen, who was a former White House chief speechwriter and Washington Post columnist and a great Fox News contributor. Mark, welcome, buddy. You were the one.
Good to be with you.
I don't know if you we quoted you. We played your tape last night on the TV show, and you said that anti-Semitism was the cousin to socialism, which I thought was just...
It is.
I know. I totally know. And David Webb and I have been talking about that, and I went back and looked at some things. You're dead right. But anyway, go ahead, expand on that one.
Well, I mean, if you go back to the Soviet Union, who were we fighting for? Who was Ronald Reagan fighting for? The refuseniks,
yep.
The Jews who they weren't allowing to emigrate. It was Natan Sharansky, and who was in the Gulag, celebrating when someone passed him a article in Pravda that Ronald Reagan had called the Soviet Union an evil empire. The left, the far left, and the far right hate Jews.
Right.
The Nazis hated the Jews, the Soviets hated the Jews. And oppress them. So there's a long history of ties between anti-Semitism and socialism. But I'll tell you, I think we need to recognize there is anti-Semitism across the political spectrum on the right and the left. In America, at least, it differs because on the right it's a fringe phenomenon, right? It's the Nick Fuenteses of the world. It's the Groypers, on the neo-Nazis, the KKK, right? On the left, it's a mainstream phenomenon for them. It's AOC, it's Rashida Tlaib, they're in their congressional caucus and welcomed in their congressional caucus. You don't see the KKK marching in Harvard. You do see the anti-Semitic left, the pro-Hamas left, marching at Harvard. And they're now adding to their ranks with these anti-Semites that they're electing in New York and other places around the country. The anti-Semites are welcome in the Democratic Party, and it's turning the party on its head because they're now pandering to this anti-Semitic base that hates the Jews, that hates Israel, and they're afraid to nominate a moderate Jew for president like Josh Shapiro. Let's say I don't think he has a chance in heck of becoming the Democratic nominee if he decides to run. But we have to watch that as conservatives and look and say this is why it's so important to not allow the Groypers into the mainstream of the movement. You keep hearing, no enemies on the right is this mantra that we get from some factions. No, I've got enemies on the right. Candace Owens is my political enemy.
Yes.
Nick Fuentes is my political enemy,
yes.
And Tucker Carlson for platforming Nick Fuentes, he's my political enemy too. These are people we have a big tent. And I'm a fusionist. Going back to the Bill Buckley days of the National Review, we have a wide swath of libertarians, traditional conservatives, all the rest of it. There is no room in my tent for anti-Semites.
And
I think this
when you were on the show. Let me hang on one second. I want to make this plain. Then we have to take a quick commercial break. Mark, when you were on the show with Ben Domenech,
yeah.
Remember, the point that I made, and you stimulated this point. Bill Buckley threw the anti-Semites out of the conservative movement. It was principally the John Birchers, but not only the John Birchers. I mean, he did that in the late 50s and 60s, and he was right.
Yeah,
he was exactly right. So the same thing has to happen now. But I just, look, I want to make we're WABC Radio. We're based in New York. I've known Chuck Schumer a very long time. We disagree on politics, no question about that. But I don't want to make it personal. I want to open the door. Mr. Schumer has an opportunity, Senator Schumer, to just blast the Mandamis of the world and Mandami and their anti-Semitism. If the Democratic Party is going to become the anti-Israel party, is that what's happened here? It's incredible to me. And, no one's called him on it more than Donald Trump. He's called him on it repeatedly. All right, let me take a break. We'll come back and talk about this stuff. Mark Thiessen, Fox News contributor, my great pal David Webb, also Fox News contributor. Much more on the corrosive effect of Mandamiism. I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back. And we're talking about Mandamiism and anti-Semitism and socialism, communism. Mark Thiessen, former White House chief speechwriter. Love that. Washington Post columnist, still, good for you. And, of course, Fox News contributor, great help on Fox. David Webb, Fox News contributor, David Webb Show on Sirius XM. Fetterman leading. John Fetterman ravages Democratic Party's orgy of socialism after primary turmoil. Lead story in the New York Post website. Ravaging the radical socialist candidates, railed against the dirtbag left after Democratic Socialists prevailed in the primaries. Chevalier described America as an F-bomb disgrace. She posted F-bomb Kamala Harris and posted that she forgot napkins and wiped her hands on the American flag. He also attacked this crazy Graham Plattner. I guess the guy in Michigan is just every bit as much as a crackpot, Mark. Whatever his name is. It's crazy.
There's a lot.
Another crazy. But there's, right, they're all over the place, aren't they? They are the tail wagging the Democratic Party dog, aren't they?
Well, what's happening is that they've decided that they're buying into this Mondami fallacy, which is that, okay, the Democratic Socialists are where the energy is in our party, so we've got to harness that energy and find energetic young left-wing candidates to take on the Republicans. And that's good in blue states and blue districts. It's not very effective when it comes to swing states. And so I think they're going to. And then the other thing that they're doing is they're committing political suicide because everyone says, oh, well, they're just making blue districts bluer. It's like, well, no, they're making blue districts bluer by driving out the red, right? And where does the red go? The red is going to Florida. The red is going to Texas. The red is going to the South. It was just a front page story in the Washington Post yesterday that the South has gained like over 7 million people in the last several years of people. Where there's people coming from? They're coming from New York. They're coming from Illinois. They're coming from these poorly governed socialist blue states. And what's going to happen? It's going to be political Armageddon after 2030 for the Democrats because we're going to have a census. And when the census happens, they're going to lose an estimated 14 congressional seats and 10 electoral college votes because of the people who are voting with their feet and leaving because they can't stop the socialists in the ballot box. So they're voting with their feet. They're leaving for the South. And they're taking their congressional seats and their electoral college votes with them. And that means the Democratic blue wall is going to be gone after 2030. It's disappeared. It's going to be like the Berlin Wall. It's going to be lying in rubble. And that means that they have to win a red state to win the presidency. That's going to be a problem for them.
Not like this. David Webb, just almost as an aside, but can the GOP successfully make the contrast regarding socialism and anti-Semitism and hatred and bigotry and all the rest of it for these midterm elections? Can they do that, David Webb?
I think they can give it a really good shot, but I'm not fully convinced they can reach enough people in some areas. One of the problems is not just messaging, but aggressive, effective messaging that isn't Donald Trump, but by the congressmen, by the local officials. The GOP has got to go down to the grassroots level to message on this. They've got to reach people where they see them, where they talk to them. It can't just be Donald Trump from the top talking about it, or you or I and Mark talking about it on television and radio. They've got to engage.
Yeah, well, they've got to. What do you think, Mark? I mean, I'm a little nervous about the GOP story. I mean, there's not just the legislative confusion that's going on now, but the messaging. What do you think?
Well, I think that traditionally the party in power loses seats in a midterm anyway. And so we have an uphill fight in the midterms. I think that we probably have some self-inflicted wounds in terms of our dear friend, the president, choosing to put Texas in play by backing Paxton when Cornyn would have been an easy win, driving Tillis out of the Republican Party, which means we're going to lose North Carolina. There are seats. If I look at the map right now, there are seats that should not. Like Ohio's a competitive state. Rob Portman won Ohio by 20 points. How is Ohio? We could lose Alaska. We could lose the Senate. This is bad news.
All right, fellas. Thank you, Mark Thiessen. I appreciate it very, very much. David Webb, always, buddy. We're going to have to close it down. I'm more optimistic, but that's me. I can't help myself. We're going to talk about the economy on the other side of the break, folks. Please stick around. We're going to bury Mondamiism and get to a better free market, free enterprise economy. I'm Kudlow. We'll be back.
Need a laptop that's built to perform and designed to last all day? Select Windows 11 PCs starting at $499.99 are now at Best Buy. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy. Imagine that.
Looking to see what's happening around your home? Ring's Battery Doorbell helps you track packages and see who's at your door in real time. The Outdoor Cam Plus protects your yard at night with a wide field of view and clearer Retinal 2K video. Or upgrade to 4K cameras and doorbells with Retinal Vision for ultra-clear zoom and detail. Your door, your yard, your home. With Ring, it's protected. Shop cameras, doorbells, and more at ring.com now.
Hey, I like your new RAV4.
Thanks, yours too.
What does RAV stand for anyway?
To me, it's the Remarkably Advanced Vehicle.
Really? To me, it's the Runway Approved Vehicle for its amazing style.
What about Remarkably Adaptable Vehicle because of its versatile cargo space?
Or Really Admired Vehicle?
Oh, or Really Awesome Vehicle.
It really is the Recreational Activity Vehicle. The stylish 2026 Toyota RAV4 Limited. What's your RAV4?
Faraday presenta Ojos con Alergia y Picazón contra el jardinero. Y el ganador es Faraday Extra Fuerte. Para aliviar la picazón de los ojos por alergia, actúa más rápido y supera a Claritin y Flonase aún a las 24 horas. Faraday, adelante.
So, let's concern ourselves with more positive things, I hope, as in the economy, where business seems to be strong, profits are strong. Stock markets are strong. Energy's coming down. I guess it's going to be a good story as the year goes on. Not everybody agrees. People are worried about inflation. Some people want to see higher interest rates. Donald Trump is not one of them. I don't think Kevin Warsh is either. But let's talk to our experts. We got John Carney, Breitbart News editor for economics and finance and co-author of the daily Breitbart Business Digest must read, and Michael Faulkender, former deputy secretary of the Treasury and the economic guru for the America First Policy Institute. You're both terrific. So, all right, just give me a lay of the land. How do you guys see it? John, start first, and then we're going to go to Michael. I mean, let's sort of round up. We had a lot of news this week on GDP and durable goods and consumer spending. How do you see it, John?
I think the economy is actually doing much better than I had thought it would be. I thought we would take a bigger hit from high gas prices. We didn't. When you see the consumer spending numbers, there's no slowdown. Consumers, I think, saw correctly that the high gas prices were going to be something that was just temporary and they were going to come down, so they didn't adjust their lives. And then on the business side of things, hiring has been really strong. The core capital investments for the durable goods numbers was very strong. And it's not just, it's not airplanes. Stuff like machinery, primary metals, the computers, these are all, the investment in this is very high, and I think that is a prediction by businesses that we're going to have a lot of growth in the future. And it's a self-fulfilling prediction because when they are investing in this, it means they're going to use it, which means growth is going to come.
Can you explain to me, Michael, I'm coming to you in a second, but I want to just follow up with John. I am reading from all kinds of economists that the AI boom and the data center boom and, these power centers, it's inflationary. The AI investment boom is inflationary. I see this everywhere, and I don't understand it.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It's not. It's actually the opposite. I think this is something you've talked about before, Larry. There are people who see growth as inflationary. They think anything that grows the economy is ultimately, bad for us because it will become inflationary. It's not. it's first of all, the AI boom is not competing for consumer goods. It's not, it's not buying food, it's not buying bicycles, and it's not buying. It is new investment in new things, and we are producing more of it. It's not inflationary at all, and I don't see the evidence for that. In any of the numbers that we've had for consumer, for the consumer price index or the personal consumption expenditures price index, it's not causing consumer inflation at all.
Mike Faulkner, why are people so? I mean, it seems like it's a supply side factor. It's a business investment factor. But people are talking about how the AI boom is inflationary. I mean, I just don't understand it.
I mean, I think what they're talking about is that the construction of data centers, to the extent that takes construction workers away from doing things they otherwise would have, I guess that's the theoretical argument as to why it could be inflationary. But look, we know that because mortgage rates are high right now, there's a pullback in construction spending on the residential side. And so if you have a reallocation from residential construction to data center construction, that's not inflationary. And then, as you just said, what it does is it creates the future capacity for productivity improvements that are disinflationary. So we're not seeing contemporaneous pressure on prices coming from this construction, and it should create reductions in price pressure in the future because of the efficiency with which businesses are going to operate as a result of these investments. And then, as John said, the jobs market is looking very strong. If you look at the inflation numbers for the last couple of months, if I recall correctly, the inflation report for May, 60% of it was energy. Well, that's being reversed. The price of gasoline today is, it was $4.10 a month ago, and today it's $3.50 nationwide. So that's a 15% reduction in energy that has not yet shown up in the inflation numbers and should generate, if you have that kind of a significant reduction in energy prices, a 15% reduction, and then you think about the portion of the consumption bundle that is energy, we should be seeing negative inflation prints on a monthly basis between June and July for those reports that are going to come out later. So that's going to take pressure off of these calls for higher interest rates if we start having the monthly read be negative and the 12-month read coming down. And as you yourself have said, if you look at the detrimmed mean on inflation, it's got a 2 handle on it. So I think the economy, as John said, is very strong. The consumer has been able to withstand these temporarily higher gas prices, I think because tax refunds were so much larger, and they therefore have not cut back on consumption. So with the resolution of this issue in Iran, with oil prices now being below $70 a barrel, we should, in combination with all the deregulatory and tax changes that the administration has made, have a very strong second half.
John, so let's see, the PCE, personal consumption expenditures deflator, 12-month change is 4.1. Fed's target is 2. Now, the core deflator, which I guess is what the Fed watches or used to watch, 3.4. But as Mike Faulkner, I was fiddling with it on the show last night. The Dallas trimmed mean PCE, so you chop off the high and the low. That's only 2.4. So it's like the old quiz show. The old John Daly quiz show. They used to have this in the 1960s or something. Will the real so-and-so please stand up? Will the real inflation, the Dow, and Kevin Warsh looks at these things. The Dow's trimmed mean PCE is 2.4. The Fed's target is 2. So what me worry?
Right, and the research that went into, why does the Dallas Fed produce this? It's because the trimmed mean is actually a better predictor of where inflation is going. The headline number and even the core number are backwards looking. They tell us where inflation has been. The trimmed mean actually has a better record of looking at what they think of as underlying inflation, and so therefore telling us where it's going to go. And what this number is telling us is, first of all, it has been basically the same since December. So it's 2.4, 2.4. We had a 2.3 month here and there, but we'd like it to come down a little bit more. But 2.4 is actually pretty close to the Fed's 2% target for PCE. And what it really is telling you is that the big headline numbers that we're seeing for 4.1 or 3.4 are not the real story with inflation. You should really look to this trim mean number, and I think I think Kevin Warsh is going, and others on the Fed are going to say, yes, when we start to come out of the Iran war oil shock, inflation is going to come down very rapidly. I think Michael is right that we're going to have some possibility of negative prints for the June and July numbers because gasoline was what pushed it up, and now it's going exactly the opposite way. It is coming down rapidly, and that is going to shift inflation. I do think we'll get either a zero or into negative on the month-to-month.
Michael,
very shortly.
Michael, you're a hardened government guy. You think the Fed will buy into the trim mean stuff? The other people in the Fed? You think Kevin Warsh will be able to sell it?
I do, because I think Kevin, having been a governor before, having just been confirmed by the Senate, and so still somewhat in his honeymoon period, and the way he handled his first press conference, the seriousness with which he's created these task forces to address some of the shortcomings recently of the Fed, I think he's got a lot of credibility. I think that people are going to give him an opportunity to prove himself. And if this is I think as John just discussed, there is credibility, there's statistical and academic credibility behind looking at something like the trimmed mean and giving it some weight because of its forecast power. And I think that will give him credibility in the FOMC meetings to hold off and keep interest rates steady while we see the full resolution of the Iran war. Let me also say one other thing about the underlying strength of the economy that really the president needs credit for, which is because of our finally attaining, after 70 years, energy independence. What that means is that higher gas prices, the money from that stays within our economy rather than being exported abroad. And so rather than high gas prices, while they're a problem for consumers, that money at least gets recirculated in our economy rather than going abroad and profiting our adversaries. So the fundamental shift in energy composition and how much of it comes from domestic sources means that we are not impacted as harmfully when gas prices temporarily rise the way that we used to be.
Well, I hope you're right. We're going to take a break. I'm just going to read this CNBC headline. Trump eases pressure on Fed Chairman Kevin Warsh as inflation tops 4%. But you guys are saying it's not really 4%. I agree with you. I'm with you on this. Anyway, it's yesterday's story. We'll talk about that on the other side of the break. John Carney, co-author of the Breitbart Business Digest, Daily Digest. Michael Faulkner is former Deputy Treasury Secretary and the head of AFPI Economics, and that's the America First Policy Institute, where you are indispensable. How about that? We're going to have our big thing in what are we having? The Summit Conference, Wednesday, right, in Washington, D.C.
That's right. Wednesday, we'll have an Econ Summit recognizing 250 years of prosperity and many more years of prosperity to come.
You, me, Steve Moore, we got the usual round up, the usual suspect. We're going to get John Carney. We should find a spot for Carney in the program also. Anyway, I got to take a break here on WABC Radio. I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back. All these inflation numbers we're talking about, by the way, if you go into market-based numbers, you see a marked decline in the future outlook for inflation or inflation expectations. The 2-year break-evens in the TIPS market, that's the CPI, 1.97%. That's the latest 2-year break-evens. I mean, that's way below the Fed's target. That's terrific. 10 years, 220. 5 years, 222. Mike Faulkner, did they look at that? Does the Federal Reserve ever look at those things? I mean, they're right there, invented 30 years ago by Robert Rubin, Obama's guy, Treasury Secretary. It's painting a completely different picture than the, coincident inflation numbers. Hello? Mr. Faulkner there? Mike Faulkner? No?
Are you there?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. David, look.
I would argue that those are more important than the CPI reads, because for, again, the reasons we just talked about, they are the numbers that are out there are stale. They don't take into account. And if what monetary policy does is convey for purposes of setting expectations about where inflation is going, then market expectations based on the Fed's actions are actually more important. If the job is to keep inflation expectations anchored around 2%, those are much better revealed by market prices telling you where the market expects inflation to go, rather than what's the most recent shock that temporarily caused them to deviate from the target. And so it demonstrates anchoring, which is the primary objective.
That's really important. I agree with that. John Carney, we don't spend enough time on that. There's other stuff. These are very useful, these market-based bond indicators. Let's say in the 10-year Treasury, first of all, so that's down to 437. I don't know. It got as high during this oil craze as, 460, 470? I don't know. But here's the thing. The 10-year real yield from TIPS, the TIPS real yield, 216. 216 now. It's been rising. It's up 26 basis points. So real interest rates, real inflation-adjusted interest rates are going up. Art Laffer argues, that's a sign of growth, higher returns to capital. In other words, it's a good thing when real rates go up and when these CPI break-evens, when inflation expectations are going down. I mean, I'd say that's optimal.
That's right. When the thing that the break-evens are really telling us is that there's definitely not a long-term inflationary problem in that the market can see. You look out the 5 and the 10-year. But the thing that is most interesting to me is there's not even a short-term one. There's, the market did what I just said consumers did, and what the Fed should obviously do as well, which is ignore what just happened with the oil price spike. That that caused a rise in the CPI and therefore the CPE or the PCE inflation numbers. But that's not something that has really affected the underlying economy very much at all. It didn't slow down consumers, but it also didn't leak out very much into either the expectations, which is something the Fed worries about, or into other prices. It actually stayed contained to to things that are pretty directly related to oil prices. So therefore, that should be looked through. And as you were saying, the rise in the real yields is really telling us that that the economy is setting up to grow much faster than it had been, and I think the Trump tax cuts have a lot to do with that. I think people like to say, oh, well, it's all AI. Yeah, but one of the reasons a lot of the AI investment is happening now rather than a year ago or a year from now is because we changed the tax code so that you're no longer penalized for investing in your business.
Yeah, that's the thing. Those depreciation, going to full cost expensing, 100% immediate cost expensing, big change. Anyway, things may be better in the economy than people think. Thank you, gentlemen. Mike Faulkner, John Carney, I appreciate it. We'll take a break. On the other side, we're going to go back to foreign policy, Ukraine, with Robert O'Brien. So we talk about Iran every week, and it's very important, but I want to raise another point here. Is the tide turning against Russia in the Ukraine war? There's a lot of stuff coming out. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, the Wall Street Journal this morning, New York Sun's been covering it. A great reporter named James Brooks. Ukraine and their unmanned weaponry, and they're knocking out Crimea and the hitting St. Petersburg and Moscow. It's really fascinating. People wrote off Ukraine, and they shouldn't. So, let's get some expert opinion on this from Ambassador Robert O'Brien, my dear friend, former National Security Advisor. He's now the chairman of American Global Strategies. Robert, we had General Keith Kellogg on the TV show last night, and he said Russia is on its back foot now, and the Ukraine story is changing, and what they're doing with these with these drones they're hitting St. Petersburg and Moscow and oil depots, and they're wreaking havoc in the Crimea. What do you make of it? I don't know if you followed this story, but it looks like it's changing.
It is, Larry, and this is a new form of warfare with these unmanned aerial vehicles, the UAVs or drones. Ukraine is showing how to use them. They're using a mix of high and low technology on the drones, long-range drones and short-range drones. The big thing, Larry, is that they've hit Oreburg, which is the big Russian oil and gas processing plant right on the border of Kazakhstan. And Kazakhstan was exporting through that facility that the Ukrainians hit 250,000 barrels a day. That's up in flames now. As of June 24th, that's offline. So what Ukraine is doing now is they're basically taking all the oil and gas out of Kazakhstan that was coming through Russia, and the Russians were benefiting mightily from it, and taking that all offline. The next focus will be on the Caspian Sea and the Caspian pipeline that goes through Russia, and they're going to cut off probably 1 million barrels a day of oil flowing through Russia.
Wow.
It's extraordinary.
Wow. That's new. I didn't know that either. And they're hitting these cities, right? They're hitting Moscow. They're hitting St. Petersburg. I mean, where's this going to lead?
Well, that's to reach out and touch the Russians and try and sap the morale of the Russian people. But the real focus of the drone campaign is, on the front lines with the short-range drones, and stopping the Russian infantry and artillery and tanks, in which they're doing very effectively. And then secondly is to eliminate the Russian oil infrastructure, and they're doing that quite methodically. The hits on St. Petersburg and Moscow get a lot of attention, rightly so, because they're hit strikes deep within Russia. But it's really the dismantling of the Russian oil infrastructure that should be causing Putin a lot of heartburn right now.
And Robert O'Brien, what about the Crimea story? I mean, attacks on Crimea, attacks on supply lines to Crimea. They haven't knocked out the land bridge yet that connects the land, but apparently they're hitting Sevastopol pretty heavily. This is a fancy part of Russia, and when Putin took Crimea, we never did anything about it. We just let him have it. It was under Obama, I guess. I mean, how bad is that story?
Well, look, the Russians can't supply the Crimean citizens with petrol now, with gasoline. They can't drive their cars. The supply lines are out to Crimea are being utterly cut off by this UAV warfare, both aerial but also on the surface in the Black Sea. And so the supply lines, Crimea are getting cut off. It's becoming a very untenable place for civilians to live and to make a livelihood and go to work and go to school. And once the civilians leave, then it becomes just purely a military encampment, and they depend on the same supply lines. So Ukraine is showing a lot of pluck, a lot of resilience, which they have from the very start. In the start, they used the weapons that we gave them, that President Trump gave them in the first term, the Javelin missiles that you were involved with. We got those to Ukraine over objections to a lot of people, who were permanent bureaucrats. But President Trump got them those Javelin missiles. They stopped the initial Russian attack, and they've shown resilience ever since. And this drone campaign is really fantastic. The one thing that worries me, Larry, is that the Russians will feel so backed into a corner that they'll, use their tactical nuclear weapons in some, sense, either on the battlefield or to make a statement with some sort of a big nuclear test or blast in the atmosphere, and that would be very bad. So I'm hoping that the Russians just give up this crazy Ukraine gambit that they started, take the peace deal. It's as good as it's going to get, and then end the war.
One other thing that comes up, Ukraine has basically taken Belarus out. Belarus was a staging ground for Russian military operations, and it's just north, so it could have gone into Kyiv. But Zelensky told whatever his name, Lukashenko, is that his name?
Yeah.
He said, we're going to start firing at you with our drones, and he folded. Lukashenko folded. He said, okay, we're going to stop. I mean, that's another plus.
It's a big plus, Larry. Look, Lukashenko didn't want to be involved in this war from the start. And, going back 5 or 6 years, I had some negotiations with him myself and with his son and his foreign minister, who the Russians probably killed, Vladimir McKay. And they didn't want to be involved, but they had, unlike the Ukrainians, they have no defenses against the Russians on their eastern border. They've got no U.S. Missiles. Lukashenko's an unreformed communist. He's relied on Putin, and now they want his sovereignty, and Putin doesn't want to give it to him. He's in between a rock and a hard place between Ukraine and Russia. But Belarus was still part of this war.
So, as a national security advisor, where is this a moment where peace talks? I mean, it's President Trump didn't really deal much with it at the G7. He's obviously focused on Iran. Okay, I get that.
Right.
But with this, I'm calling it the Ukraine comeback. That may or may not be accurate, but it seems accurate. Is this a moment to, seek peace talks, or is just Putin, the old KGB guy? Is he just gonna be, in his own world and keep fighting and until he drags the whole country down? I mean, how does this end?
Well, the way that it ends is for Russia to stop fighting and to maybe take a little bit of eastern Ukraine, where the Russian people are the majority, and to get back Crimea and to get back most of the Donbass, take a little bit of territory and call it a day. And President Trump has offered them very generous terms. They need to take those terms. They need to end the warfare. Now, Ukraine's having a great comeback, and we're all thrilled about it, and I'm heartened by it. But still, Ukraine is bleeding and dying as well. Ukraine is losing a lot of people every day, every week, every month. And Ukraine can't afford to lose their men and material the way they are. This war really needs to come to an end. And I think this offensive and these new drone tactics by the Ukrainians are highly effective and are giving hope to the people and are putting Russia back on, as you noted, on their back feet. But we'll have to get Vladimir Putin to the table. The only person who can get Vladimir Putin to the table is Donald Trump. And probably now might be the right time to tell him, look, come to the table, take the deal I've given you, or we're going to put massive economic sanctions on you and finish you off. Because the combination of the Ukrainian drone campaign and massive American and European sanctions would cripple the Russian economy. And we need to tell him to come to the table, or he's going to face that. As President Trump keeps saying, we have to end the killing.
Well, that's right, 100%. But are we talking to Putin? I mean, I don't know the state of play here.
So Putin is very isolated right now. Putin moved his offices, basically his White House, from the Kremlin to his dock outside of Moscow, probably about 20 miles away. He has the equivalent of the White House staff. He's got his staff there. He left all his ministers in Moscow. He's very isolated just with his people, the people he trusts around him. He's got air defenses on his Staka. He's got it's heavily fortified, and he's very isolated. And people question whether he's actually being told what's happening. Putin's a smart guy, so I assume he knows what's going on in Ukraine and Russia, but he's surrounded by a coterie of people that who's going to give him bad news, right? I mean, do you want to walk into Vladimir Putin, Larry, and tell him that he's losing the war?
You will. President Trump should send you. You're the best diplomat we have.
Well, thank you, but
I'll send you with Keith Kellogg too. He's a good, retired general. You make a great team.
Well, Keith is a great guy. We worked very closely together in the first term, and
I know.
President Trump wisely chose him to be the Ukraine envoy. And Keith is a prince of a guy.
I'm not going. I'll let you go.
Putin needs some Russian messenger to come in, one of his own people, and tell him, "Hey, boss, we're losing the war. We got to wrap this thing up."
That's it, right? He needs some truth. He needs a truth teller. That's exactly right.
I don't know if there's anyone in Russia who'll tell him the truth.
Holy cow! Well, it's a fascinating story, and it's a fascinating turn of events. Zelensky probably deserves a lot more credit than he ever gets. Anyway, Robert O'Brien is a former national security advisor. He's probably the exact right guy to go over there. Anyways, now chairman of American Global Strategies. He's my mentor and tutor on all these matters. Thank you, Robert. We appreciate it. We'll take a break, folks, and then we're going to get ace pollster John McLaughlin, because you know what? Donald Trump's approval ratings are going up rapidly, okay? Believe it or not. He's the Zelensky of American politics. I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back. Well, don't look now. But a lot of polls are showing comeback for President Trump's approval ratings. People write them off, and some of these public polls are not worth the paper they're printed on. They don't even measure citizens. They don't even poll citizens, and certainly not likely voters. Likely voters are the key, with a correct Democrat-Republican split based on 2024 election and other recent elections. One ace pollster is my pal John McLaughlin, McLaughlin and Associates, who does poll likely voters, and the results are very positive for Mr. Trump. Not necessarily uniformly. The game's not over yet. But, John, come back on. You were great on the TV last night. I mean, I think it's important. You got Trump is 50-46. 50-46. Now, right. Where was he a month or two back? I mean, in other words, this is a bounce back from where?
So it was last month we had him at 48 approved, 47 disapproved. So this is a net gain of 4 points.
Where was the low? Was there a low like during the war, or where would you mark the low?
Last month. It had tightened up. It's been pretty consistent since the beginning of the year, and then in March when the war started, he was 48, 47, and then 49, 46. And back to 48, 47, and now he's 50 and 46. He ticked up, and when we asked about what they've heard about the ceasefire deal, most Americans supported 51-34, but there's a message gap where if they know that, part of the agreement is that Iran can never produce nuclear weapons and there'll be inspections to verify it, 76-14, all Americans support. And when they talk about requiring Iran to stop funding of international terrorism against Israel and other nations, they supported 75-14. So they're not getting. What we find is that if they listen to right of center news, they support the deal 72-17. But if they're on left of center news, they oppose it 54-35. And if they don't watch cable, they kind of split 42-36. So the president still has to get out a lot of information about this deal. Plus, they've got to work out the deal. It's going to take a long time.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, the elections in November for Congress, they're really about the economy. And they're really about, trying to grow the economy. Because we had a question in the survey when we asked voters about, the Democrats have been going to vote against any, tax cuts. Republicans could use a reconciliation bill. Would they approve or disapprove of a pro-growth reconciliation bill that's waste, fraud, and corruption and would require proof of citizenship and voter ID to vote and expands middle-class tax cuts? Among all voters, they support that kind of reconciliation bill, 59-29, including a third of the Democrats and those who are undecided for Congress because on the generic ballot, the Republicans are losing right now, but it's close, 46-43. But the undecided 11%, they support this pro-growth package 58-18. And independents support it 59-27. So, so while the president's taking care of national security, Iran, securing the border, et cetera, Congress needs to focus on keeping the economy growing. And the Senate and the House Republicans, if they want to keep their majorities, they need to pass that tax cut.
Have these numbers circulated to the Senate and House leaders, Republican leaders?
We posted them on Newsmax for an article about it, and they're on our website at McLaughlinOnline.com. And we do send it out to a lot of our candidates that we poll for, or members of Congress that we poll for, plus White House officials. So they're percolating, but it's one of those things where there's been plenty of numbers like this. And by the way, the details in this, because you and Steve Forbes and I and Steve Moore, we've talked about this on your show, the idea of allowing homeowners with low rate mortgages of 2 or 3 or 4% to transfer that mortgage to buy a new home. Voters support that 71-14.
That's unbelievable.
The idea of reducing the tax brackets from 7 to 5 for taxpayers under $200,000, so their federal tax rate had dropped from 22 or 24% to only 12. All voters support that 68% to 18%, including independents 68 to 18. And the idea of indexing capital gains for inflation, so taxes don't rise with inflation. All voters support 62 to 16. And then the idea of if you want to get more houses on the market, encouraging older homeowners to sell their homes by doubling the homeowners tax exemption. So single homeowners, the exemption go up to $500,000, $1 million for married. They support that 52 to 28. So you've got really good policy that you have been, you basically called these shots. You got really good policy that if the Republicans want to keep the House and Senate,
well,
I think pass this.
Look, I think though the president has to be sold on it. He's not messaging it right now. Now, the Save America, yes, he is, which is great. We got to have that photo ID and so forth. But we're not messaging the tax cuts, and they're not messaging a little bit, John. They're messaging the waste, fraud, abuse, and corruption. But they're not doing it, as an institutional thing. It's right. Like a legal thing. Okay, I'm glad the Justice Department is going after it, but I think people want to see lower budget deficits, and I think you have to translate that. So I think Mike Johnson, got to talk to Mike Johnson about this, and John Thune to some extent, and the president, because they're not really messaging this yet. I mean, I don't see it, I don't hear it. Yes, on the voting. But that's all. I don't see the growth message is not there. You and I have talked about this. I know Steve Forbes wrote the thing, the Kudlow growth plan, but it has to be socialized, and it hasn't been. See, Trump's in a stronger position. What your polls are saying, and by the way, the Fabrizio, and I know you're friends with Fabrizio, shows the same thing. Trump has good approval numbers, but he's in a stronger position than a lot of people think. He's in a stronger position than a lot of Republican senators think, John. Think about that.
Yeah, right. And now you're pointing about messaging. That's why they're losing the generic ballot for Congress to the Democrats.
Right.
Which now are socialists. The Democrats, you're going to have a clear choice.
Yep.
The Democrats want tax hikes, and they want to take your property. And Republicans want to cut your taxes and let you have more property, let you have a home.
Anti-Semitic and socialist. They'll hammer on that, too. We're always out of time. John McLaughlin, Ace Pollster, thank you for that. We appreciate it. Folks, we will take a break, and we're going to do some fabulous stock market work. On the other side, I'm Kudlow. Please stick around. Welcome back, everybody. Hour 3, we're going to do some stock market work. By the way, you can live stream us on the Internet, if that works for you. LarryKudlowShow.com, LarryKudlowShow.com. Hear us all across the country, around the world, throughout the solar system, including the Milky Way. And by the by, please join us during the week on fabulous Fox Business Network Name of the show's Kudlow. Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. every day. And if you can't make it at 4, just text your favorite 9-year-old, and she will show you how to DVR the show. So let's turn to the stock market, which was a little sluggish this past week. But basically, I think profits are still going to be driving stocks, okay? And we talked about interest rates earlier and how all the inflation-adjusted rates, the so-called break-evens, have been low and got people out there talking about 1, 2, and 3 rate hikes. I think they're out of their mind. The economy is probably better than most folks think. But let's explore. We have one of my total favorites here, Stephanie Link. Ms. Stephanie Link, Hightower Advisors, Chief Investment Strategist and Head of Investment Solutions. The best of the best. And if that weren't enough, Ken Polcari is here, Chief Market Strategist at Slate Stone Wealth. All right, now, Ken, I'm going to go to Stephanie first.
That's great. I love Stephanie, so go right ahead.
Right, because she's Stephanie Link, and
That's absolutely correct.
We have to hear the riff because she's going to save us again, as she always does. So, Steph, what do you think of the world? Give us an overview.
What an introduction, and it's so great to be with you and Kenny as well. I think that you hit the nail on the head when you said the economy is better than what people think. I was away, not last week, but 2 weeks ago, and just was catching up all week on all the economic data that we've seen in the last 2 weeks, and it's been really good. The consumer, it started with retail sales 2 weeks ago at 5.2%. Ex-auto 6.1%, control group 6.3%. We know the control group goes into GDP. You got personal income this past week, better wage numbers, and weekly claims that are still very, very low. On top of that, on the industrial side of the economy, you've got PMIs on the manufacturing, the best since 2022. And, of course, we know services is very good, but the manufacturing piece is really heating up. And, of course, we know that that's all tied to the whole AI. And then what I say is the food chain, data center, grid, power. All these sectors are benefiting from all this enormous CapEx. But the most positive thing, in my mind, in this past week is that oil prices continue to slide. We are now down 39% from the highs. So not only is that good for the consumer and all of the throughput for businesses, but I think inflation has peaked. And I think that's what the bond market is telling you with yields coming down. And that's all of this is very positive for earnings, to your point. Absolutely. We're expected to grow about 20% in earnings this next quarter.
Pretty soon people are going to be complaining that oil prices are too low.
Yeah.
The oil companies who are predicting $250 a barrel, they're going to be yelling because we're going through 70 into the 60s. How about the gasoline prices? They're going to keep coming down, aren't they, Steph?
Absolutely, and we know the administration has been very vocal about that to the oil companies. They tend to raise prices faster than they lower them, but they are going to lower them, and that is going to be really quite positive, I think. And I mean, I think at the end of the day, like the market is, we can get into this whole technologies wobbling a little bit, but we're starting to see a broadening out. We should see a broadening out when the economy is growing 3% plus. And so financials have caught a bid. Healthcare has caught a bid. I think discretionary is your hidden value in this market right now because of all the things that I just said.
Kenny Polcari, you've been around a while. You ever heard the phrase, oil traders phrase, rockets and feathers?
Yes.
Rockets and feathers?
I've heard it, but you can probably explain it better than I can.
No, it just means that gasoline prices go up like rockets
and come down,
but they
like
come
feathers.
Down very slowly like feathers.
Right.
So you have to have a little patience, is what you have to have.
The gasoline prices, though, are they really set by the oil companies, or are they set down at the retail level?
Retail.
Aren't they more set by the retailer?
Retailer.
Yeah, they're not set by Exxon and Chevron.
But the president loves to stick it. He gives them a little stick. I've seen this movie before. I mean, I experienced it firsthand. So, but the local stations do. But it will. But you're going to come down a lot more, aren't we?
100%, especially if we see oil. If this ceasefire holds, and I really think it will. You got to take what happened last night as an outlier, I think. And I think we're going to continue to see oil prices come down. You saw what happened in Saudi Arabia yesterday. They were loading up, 2 large tankers and sending them through, something we haven't seen in months now. Yep. And that just suggests that, it's going to start to flow. And once it does, I think we're going to see oil come back down to the mid to low 60s, which is, I think, about where it was right before. Maybe it was in the mid 60s when the conflict started. But I think we're going to see it drop to the mid low 60s, and that should once again cause, it will cause gasoline prices at the pump to decline much faster, I think.
There's a guy who he's an analyst for Fox Business. I mean, I'm sure he has his own company's name. Phil Flynn, you guys? I don't know if you know Phil Flynn.
Yeah.
Nice guy. Anyway, he's talking about a oil production tsunami where you pointed out Saudi Arabia, but also Iraq wants to produce more. UAE wants to produce more.
Right.
And then they're shipping oil through the East-West pipeline, and they're building another pipeline, if I'm not mistaken.
They are. So,
the OPEC monopoly has been damaged. And yes, I agree with you. The ceasefire, the strait will stay open. So that's got to be good, Kenny. I mean, it might even be good for interest rates.
Yeah, I think it'll be good for interest rates because, to Stephanie's point, I do think inflation has peaked. I think if we start to see oil come down some more, then that's going to take some of the pressure off. Now, there'll be other parts of the economy, and you saw it this week in MU's announcement that there's that supply shortage in memory, and so prices are higher, and right away Apple raises prices and Microsoft raised prices on their Xbox. But that's not stuff you buy every single day, right? You buy gas almost every day or weekly or however you buy your gas. That's going to be much more noticeable. And so I do think that, to Stephanie's point, inflation will come down and this rally will broaden out. And in fact, if you look at what happened this week, yes, there was pressure on tech, but look whatever else. Caterpillar was up 11%, 5% on Monday, 6% on Thursday or Friday, whatever day it was up that much. Honeywell was up, IBM was up, Johnson & Johnson was up, Merck was up. So it's absolutely spreading out, which is a positive.
Stephanie, a little Fed watching. We had earlier in the week, Bank of America said there are going to be 3 rate hikes.
Yeah.
And everybody had to swallow hard on it. I don't know what you think. I don't see it. I don't know why it's necessary.
I would agree with you. I don't see rate hikes. I don't see cuts, though. So I think that they'll stay where they are. Because, and this is really important, even though oil's coming down and commodities are coming down, the AI food chain is, by definition, it is inflationary. And it's to what Kenny just said, we're short memory, we're short compute, we're short copper, we're short aluminum. So pre-war, inflation was running about 2.8%, ahead of the 2% target the Fed wants. Now, I think we can get back there. And then I think that Warsh and team, they're going to have to watch it, monitor it, and see what happens. Eventually, this whole AI CapEx boom is a productivity machine. And so we want to watch that to offset some of the stuff that we're short. And that could also be very helpful and productive for inflation. But I'm not sure we get to 2%. So that's why I don't think they're going to be cutting anytime soon.
Right.
What about these break-evens? Like the 2-year tips break even 197, the 5-year tip 222,
yeah.
The 10-year tips implied inflation 220.
Yeah.
Now those are, that would suggest that inflation expectations are anchored low.
Mm-hmm.
So we haven't really done any damage. Now, energy is, dominates the economy. These energy prices affect hundreds and hundreds of prices. So if they come down, doesn't that bring the CPI down?
100%.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Kenny.
No, it's going to bring PPI, CPI, and the PC is going to bring all 3 of them down.
Yeah.
It should, anyway.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? If rates come down, then this action we're seeing in housing, because the housing stocks took off this week, then you can actually get a housing cycle. If you can get the 30-year fix at under 6, D.R. Horton has said it, under 6, we start to see much more demand because the demand it's so pent up. And we're still 4 million homes short in this country. We are growing 3% in GDP, and we haven't had a housing cycle yet. Can you imagine if we actually do and what that would do to growth? That would be very, very good and very positive.
I'm looking at my sheets. S&P 500 home builders were up 5.8% this past week. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
That's a bit. Why is that? What's cooking there?
Well, I think you look at yields, and they've come down. And I think people are expecting that yields will continue to come down because inflation is coming down, and therefore we have all this demand. We have 5 million millennials that want to buy a home. We have home builders that are buying back their stock instead of building because it doesn't make sense. And so we need rates to come down, and if rates do come down, and they're just too high right now, 6.5% 30-year fix is not going to do it. But I do think that what we're anticipating is rates will continue to come down, and then eventually you will see this demand. And by the way, these companies are doing a masterful job in the face of all of this difficulty, these headwinds. They're still putting up good gross margins, good orders, and good earnings because they are managing it well.
I tell you, so I've said this before, I sleep better at night knowing that Stephanie Link is still in the investment. I sleep better at night. All right, let me take a commercial break. We are capitalists here. We're talking to the great Stephanie Link, Hightower Advisors, Chief Investment Strategist and Head of Investment Solutions, and Kenny Polcari is the Chief Market Strategist at Slate Stone Wealth. I'm Kudlow. We're going to come back and talk about profits, the mother's milk of stock. So I've said for about 40 years or so, profits are the mother's milk of stocks and the lifeblood of the economy.
For the moments that matter, choose Curad Naturals. Infused with aloe vera and vitamin E, Curad Naturals bandages protect your unexpected scrapes, cuts, and burns while also moisturizing your skin. Find deeper relief with natural ingredients you can trust to start the healing. When life's surprises call for the best, choose Curad, a deeper level of care. Shop the full collection on Amazon or visit Curad.com to learn more.
I sold my car in Carvana last night.
Well, that's cool.
No, you don't understand. It went perfectly. Real offer, down to the penny. They're picking it up tomorrow. Nothing went wrong.
So, what's the problem?
That is the problem. Nothing in my life goes as smoothly. I'm waiting for the catch.
Maybe there's no catch.
That's exactly what a catch would want me to think.
Wow, you need to relax.
I need to knock on wood. Do we have wood? Is this table wood?
I think it's laminate.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's close enough.
Car selling without a catch. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.
Are you one of those media strategy people clicking through slides, scrolling spreadsheets? Yes? Good. This is for you. Because on Spotify, there's an audience that's different, locked in, loyal, invested. They're called fans. Fans don't just listen to music. They feel seen by it, like it belongs to them. So when your brand shows up on Spotify, that's who you're talking to. And you're right next to artists like me, Lizzo. So, are you ready to talk to fans? Spotify advertising. You're among fans.
Hey there, it's Wayfair here, where delivery and setup are as easy as a few taps on your phone. You're relaxing in an old hammock, scrolling Wayfair's app, when you spot it, a brand new patio set. Next thing you know, Wayfair delivers it right to your patio and sets it up. Oh, you need a new grill too? All right, Wayfair's got you covered. With Wayfair's room of choice delivery and fast expert setup on qualifying orders, life gets a little easier. Visit wayfair.com or the Wayfair app.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
I think the profit story is still pretty good. I don't see any, even the GDP report, the GDP profits look pretty good. It's a bit of a lag, but we're talking to Stephanie Link, Hightower Advisors and Investment Solutions, and we're talking to Kenny Polcari of Slate Stone. Well, Stephanie, how do you read the profits from a micro standpoint, not just macro, but, as the companies report, how do you see it?
It's interesting, Larry, that it's not only earnings, it's revenues are better than expected, growing double digits, and its margins are expanding, which is really fascinating to me. because, you have all these inflation, headwinds, but these companies are doing such a masterful job in terms of just figuring out the productivity piece of it and the efficiency piece of it. And this is why the U.S. companies are the best companies in the world. We do it better than anybody. But I will say one thing. The H8 data that I look at every week, I know you look at it too, Larry, we're at 7.7% in loan growth. This is the best loan growth in 3 years. That is really telling to me because they're on the front line. They're the ones that are lending out. They are the ones that are engaging in the activity and increased activity in this economy. And that will all, kind of funnel down to better than expected profits. And while I know we're expecting good profits, I've been in this 35 years and I've never seen earnings growth this robust for this long. And it speaks to this revolution we're seeing in the AI and, again, the food chain.
I didn't know banks still made commercial loans. It's a very exciting thought.
Yes. Do you know they are taking market share from private equity? They're taking market share because the deregulations have relaxed, and now they can go and lend out, right? Kenny knows this too.
So I have
it's a turnaround.
I have heard, Kenny, that community banks are having a comeback. Talk about, business loans, community.
Yeah.
And I know that the new management at the Federal Reserve, Mickey Bowman in there first, now Kevin Warsh, but they want, they're trying to deregulate and make it easier for community banks to survive and make local loans.
Right, and they should, because that's really community banks. That was essentially why community banks even exist, right? To help the community, to be there for the community. So I think that's all positive. And to Stephanie's point, you're seeing some of that deregulation happening. You see Warsh wants it. And so I would suspect that that's going to be very positive for the industry, but specifically community banks.
What is what's the commodity story, Kenny? I've seen, here, this is what I don't know much, but I know energy down. I know that.
Yeah.
A lot of farming commodities are down, but copper's doing fine.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair?
I don't watch copper too much, but I think copper is doing fine. I focus on gold, what gold is doing, and certainly we've seen gold come off its highs of recent, and I think it's going to continue actually to trend lower. I put it in my note the other day. I said if we don't hold right here at the 4,050 level, I think you see gold potentially go back to 3,500 as long as the geopolitical situation remains kind of in control and people aren't running for that safe haven, trade anymore, and they start to refocus once again on moving away from that safe haven kind of mode and back into the investing mode. I think you potentially see gold come back to 3,500, which would be a huge swing considering where it was and kind of the momentum it had. We've seen that all turn around now that this conflict has seemed to settle down, and that fear trade is out of or at least out of the gold trade at the moment. And so I think it's a positive.
It's telling that gold is falling and copper is rising, and that's risk on. And that is also because the economy is, what's the number one thing that goes into a plant, a physical plant, a data center?
Yeah, copper.
It's copper.
Yeah, copper.
It's copper.
Right.
It's electrification.
Not
so
gold.
It is
right,
not gold. That's right. Gold tends to be more of a hedge or maybe more conservative trade or whatnot. But copper
trade.
is really the tell. Yeah.
Yeah.
When just on the way out to have some fun, when then President Richard Nixon, just before he had to resign, convinced Alan Greenspan to go on as the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, the price of gold was $35 an ounce. Just saying. Now we're talking about $33,500. Anyway, Stephanie Link, thank you. Ken Polcari, thank you. Fabulous stuff. Money and politics coming up, folks. Stay with us. So we're going to talk a little money and politics like we always do the last half hour, and I want to pursue the theme that what I'm calling the Mandami AOC, anti-Semitic, socialist, communist, whatever they are, they're the tail that's wagging the Democratic Party dog. And I see AOC running for president. And I don't know how it's going to turn out. But I don't see anybody, who in the Democratic Party is going to stop them? I have no idea. I don't understand any of this stuff. I hate it. But I was get some input from our two friends, Liz Peek, who is Fox News contributor, Steve Moore, Unleash Prosperity Hotline, Steve's show, WABC show, More Money, pops up right after this show on most of these same radio stations. Steve and I are doing a dog and pony conference, AFPI, Unleash Prosperity in Washington, Wednesday. Be a lot of fun. Go ahead, Liz. Tell me, AOC, she's going to be the Democratic presidential front runner. That's what's happening here. Okay? Maybe I'm cynical, but I don't think so. I looked at what happened in the election. We've been talking about it. You know, the Democratic Party's turned against Israel. It's becoming anti-Semitic. Certainly the Madami crowd is. She's part of that group. But they're socialists. They want to, run housing, nationalize corporations, end the Senate, open borders. It's a fabulous, unbelievable agenda. She's going to be high-flying. Go ahead. Talk about it.
Well, I'm afraid you're right that she certainly got a boost from the results in New York. But remember that not all the progressives won, even in New York. And there's a reason for that. First of all, you're right, the anti-Semitic aspect of this Democratic Socialist Party, surely the 71% of Jews who voted for Kamala Harris are not going to line up to vote for AOC, who is a Democratic Socialist, because they're clearly beginning to understand that Zohran Mamdani and all his pals are not just neutral, they are distinctly anti-Israel and anti-Semitic. So I assume there's a support leakage there. Also, I think black voters, we saw some of this in New York City even, they're not very keen on socialism, and they've worked really hard to become homeowners. Are they really going to be excited about a group that comes in and says, hey, if you're a landlord and you have several units, we're not going to let you raise your rent, so you're going to go under, and then their next step is we're going to nationalize what you have, or the state is going to take over what you have. I'm not sure, Larry, that this message at its most extreme, and that's what we are seeing now in New York, is really going to carry very well into the nation. Who's going to stop it? I assume that Pete Buttigieg and Nancy Pelosi, who did come out against one of these progressives, supported Dan Goldman, who, by the way, is a progressive, but he's not an anti-Semite, and other members of the Democratic establishment are going to line up against AOC if she is the preferred candidate of this crowd, just the way they did against Bernie Sanders in 2020 and 2016. I think they're pretty clear that the rest of the country is not on board with this, and I surely hope that's the case.
Without agreeing or disagreeing, Steve Moore, Bernie Sanders could have been the nominee in 2020. He was winning. Right. They stopped him. Clyburn and a bunch of them stopped him for Biden. But these old party elder hacks, whatever they are, they're not really active anymore. I don't know if they want to. If Bernie Sanders will be with AOC, Liz Warren will be with AOC, or something like that. And Chuck Schumer's not going to, he wants her out of New York so she doesn't win a Senate seat. I'm just throwing stuff out there. I hate this stuff. This is the most, to me, the socialism is bad, or the communism, but the anti-Semitism is even worse. But AOC, she's going to be I don't know, tell me who's going to stop her.
Well, Larry, I've been predicting for many months that AOC would be the Democratic nominee, and I think she's got all the winds right at her tail, and I think the Democratic Party has moved so radically in this direction. And just two quick things about this. One is, Liz is right. New York is not the country. Even as New York City, Democrats are not even representative necessarily Democratic Party around the country. But where are the Democrats who are speaking out against these people? That's the most remarkable thing. Mm-hmm. Nobody, the only one who's doing that is Rahm Emanuel, who is formerly the chief of staff for Bill Clinton, and he was the mayor of Chicago and a good mayor. And he's saying, this is crazy. What are we talking about? This isn't Bill Clinton economics. This isn't New Democrats. This is Eugene Debs Democrat.
Yeah.
Debs was probably to the right of these people. And the other thing is, everybody's saying, well, maybe, it's going to be the governor, Gavin Newsom. Maybe he's the savior. He just yesterday came out for a massive federal wealth tax.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Great economics, great politics. Good for him. Look, James Carville's against it, but James Carville doesn't have any clout anymore. John Fetterman is against it, but John Fetterman, he's just going to be against it. He's not going to switch parties or anything. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just...
Larry, I think we have to wait till we get into primary season of the Democrats. There are a lot of people who want to be president, including Gavin Newsom, and they make a lot of noises so they don't get immediately disqualified by young voters who are on this socialist train. But at the end of the day, he's also going to go after AOC and other people who are really spouting this stuff. He has to. I mean, not all the country's with them, and they're going to have to differentiate themselves. I don't really see Pete Buttigieg, who I think is a horribly weak candidate. He's not going to line up on this side. I just don't think that's going to happen. So I think voters will have a choice, and we'll see what happens. But I just cannot imagine that the country is going to roll over and let people who truly are disqualifiable based on their ignorance of economics and political history and everything else. I just can't imagine that they're going to be that successful.
But, if you go back, you were talking about what happened in 2020. Let's review that history because I think it's very important. Bernie Sanders was on his way to winning the nomination, right? And the party elders got together in a very famous meeting and said, no, it's not going to be Bernie Sanders. He can't win. And they chose Joe Biden, for better or for worse, and Biden was able to to pull out this victory. I wonder whether the party can do that again. I wonder if they could say to the party people, look, AOC is too far to the left, because the problem is that's where so many of the activists in the party are.
I agree. That's where the
torque. They were then too, Steve. That's where the energy was. That's why they were so afraid of Bernie Sanders. And Hillary Clinton, to this day, says the reason she lost is that those guys didn't come out and vote. Nonetheless, there were enough people in the Democratic Party. And again, I don't know who they are now. I agree with Larry. I mean, they're sort of quiet. But there are a lot of people who understand that this could be really seriously dangerous for them. I mean, where is AIPAC going to land? We know it's not going to be with Democrats. Where are all the corporate PACs going to show up? I mean, there's a lot of interest, and they're going to call them special moneyed interest, and it's true. There's going to be a lot of money brought into these races, and I think a lot of it's going to be successful.
I'd make the case that Bernie Sanders won the 2020 election.
He may.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Exactly. He just said a surrogate.
That's exactly. He said
actually,
right, and a rather feeble surrogate at that.
Yes, right.
Well, if you remember, Larry, that you're completely correct. In order to get him to come out and his Bernie bros to come out and vote, Joe Biden let him write the platform. Do you remember that?
I do.
He had just won the nomination.
I remember you talking about it, and you wrote a piece about it, which was an eye-opener. Yeah.
It was so offensive that they just rolled over. He may not have gotten the nomination, but by George, his policies were front and center in the Democratic platform. Thankfully, they didn't really they didn't become legislation. There was some legislation that was certainly pro-Bernie, left-wing, the whole pro-worker acts and pro-union and all that kind of stuff. Joe Biden was in favor of that, but that was really Bernie. They have let this thing metastasize, and shame on Democrats for doing this, because it isn't just anti-Semitism. These people hate America.
Yeah.
That's what everybody in the country needs to know. And I think that's going to be just a huge talking point in the upcoming elections, in the midterms and for the president.
No, their North Star is somewhere between Palestine and Uganda. America doesn't figure into their calculations at all. They hate America.
Did you guys see the story this morning about all these Cubans are getting on these boats and they're getting out of New York and they're searching for freedom?
They're leaving New York in boats? No, I did not see that.
It's a cartoon.
To go to Cuba.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We're going back to Cuba where there's some freedom.
But listen, AOC is better looking and better communicator than Bernie or any of the others.
He is. Yeah.
I mean, you talk about
she's
people.
charismatic.
Pete Buttigieg, I mean, he's just the most ineffectual politician I can think of. And by the way, so is Gavin Newsom. He's just completely ineffectual. I mean, if the party elders, whoever they are, I look at Chuck Schumer. I mean, I've talked about that earlier in the show. And I'm in New York here, and I know Chuck Schumer many, many years. We have major political disagreements. But I do respect the fact, that he's climbed the political pole. He's the leading Jewish official in America. And for him not to attack the anti-Semitism that is such a key part of Mandami's coalition and DSA, for him not to attack, it breaks my heart in a sense, because he's the guy who should do it. And Trump picks on him a lot and says he's from Palestine. But,
there's
Senator Schumer he is an elder state. I'm going to say something nice about him, even though we have major political differences.
Right.
But I've known him for many years, personally. Know him. He has he is a very accomplished. He has achieved all these things. He has climbed the greasy pole. He was in the New York State Assembly, New York State Senate. He was a House member. Then he became a senator. And then he became the leader of the Democrats in the Senate. So let's give credit where credit is due, just for those accomplishments, putting the politics aside. To me, it breaks my heart that he, as the leading Jewish politician, will not attack the anti-Semitism, leaving alone the socialism, the anti-Semitism, and the fact that the Democratic Party itself has essentially come against Israel. All right? It just it staggers me. It breaks my heart. I just want to say that, okay? I've lived in New York, I don't know, on and off for 50 years, and here we are broadcasting in New York. We're the most important radio station. So you understand what I'm saying. It just breaks my heart, putting the politics aside. Go ahead, Steve. I didn't mean to interrupt. But
I was just going to make one other point about this movement, which is the thing that's sort of scary about it is that it's the young people. It's the millennials and the Generation Z.
Yes.
And, I listened to two of these speeches by a couple of these women who won city council races. They were graduates of Columbia University.
Sure.
I mean, Ivy League school. And they're spouting out this ignorance and craziness. And so I do think we pay, as a country, we paid a very, very high price for letting the left take over the cultural institutions in our country, including the schools.
All right, kids, let me take a quick break. Liz Peek, Fox News, Steve Moore's show, More Money, coming up right after this show on most of these same radio stations. I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back. So we're talking money and politics. Steve Moore's here, and his show, More Money, coming up right after this show on most of these same radio stations. And the great Liz Peek, Fox News contributor. So we're kibitzing. All right, Liz, which Republican will beat AOC?
I was going to say before the break, I don't know who's going to beat her. I don't know who the nominee is going to be. But let's just imagine for a moment J.D. Vance and or Marco Rubio debating AOC. I want to be there. I want to watch that because you guys are talking about how she's attractive, she's articulate. Yeah, she's all those things. She's a great TikTok star. But does she have a brain in her head? Does she really know anything that, her defending, I want to watch her try to defend these policies which are indefensible, policies which have never worked in the history of any country. So, yeah, I think J.D. Vance would be awesome. I also think Marco Rubio would be awesome. I think the Republicans have an incredible bench. And by the way, Governor Ron DeSantis is a terrific potential candidate. Mike Pompeo. These are brilliant people, articulate, smart, fact-filled, and they've got facts on their side. So whoever it is, Larry, if the nation tunes into these debates, guess what? AOC is not going to do very well.
I'm waiting for Steve. That's all. I'm just waiting for Steve Moore.
Well, I cannot disagree with what you guys were just saying. And look, I do think there's going to be a bit of a fight within the Republican Party post-Trump. There's no question it's Donald Trump's party right now, but you've got J.D. Vance, who is what we call a national conservative. And, some of the issues that, Larry, you and I talk about on your show all the time, I don't think he's completely aligned.
Nope.
And so I think there might be someone I don't know who that might be. I think Ron DeSantis is a great governor, no question. I think he'd be a great president. I think that I don't know if it's his turn right now. I think he didn't do so well the last time around, but I do want to see that fight, for the soul of the Republican Party as we go forward. And I do think just about any Republican could and should beat one of these Democrat socialists. It's not America. I mean, my goodness, we're celebrating our 250th year as the freedom country in the world, and they're spouting off all these crazy ideas. One other quick thing. When I give the lectures on college campus, I don't do it as often as I used to, but, I talk about capitalism versus, socialism. And the people who always come up to me after I'm done are the, people who came from Hungary or Poland or Cuba, and they say, I don't understand my classmates. I came to this country to get to freedom, and they want to take freedom away.
I think it'll be interesting to see who in the GOP becomes the leading AOC Mondami attacker in this year's midterms. Now, the president, you saw him yesterday at Ralph Reed's conference. Okay. Yes. And the president was very tough and very strong, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. Okay, but I want to see who else is going to be out there making those points. I mean, the president, and he didn't pull punches. He talked about God and faith and religion and the godless communism and the communism and all that. So he was great. And he may be the big mule, as he has been for so many years. But I'm waiting to see, Steve and Liz, who else emerges to just knock this craziness down, to just knock it down.
Larry, Trump when will he make his decision about when is he going to tap either? He's got this game he started playing with J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio in terms of which one of those two.
I don't know that he will. I mean, and I don't know. Let me rephrase. There's going to be primaries. He will not do it before primaries. I guarantee that. Now, he may decide. I don't know. I don't know that he ever will. Rubio is so important in the cabinet. Trump has tremendous regard for Rubio. In fact, we had a dinner during the 24 campaign when Mr. Trump was here on one of those crazy, he was in court, and we had dinner with him in his apartment. Just the 3 or 4 of us. That's all it was. I'm not going to name names. And he said that the toughest candidate in 2016, the toughest debater and the toughest opponent was Rubio. Okay, he said that. Now, he obviously picked J.D. Vance, and he's giving him a lot of responsibility. So I don't know that he'll ever pick between the two. And you both recall the second biggest delegate vote getter in 2016 was Ted Cruz, who in many respects I think would like to run, is qualified to run, and he's more the free market growth guy, supply side guy. There's that channel for him if he chooses to take it. So, I mean, I don't know, but I'm wondering in the next few months, before we get to 28, we got to go through the midterms. Who's going to take on Mondami? Who's going to take on AOC besides President Trump? I don't know. Anyway.
I assume that the president, who has said he will be very active in midterm campaigning, is going to get everybody out there.
Yep. No. I think that's the way it's going to work.
And yes, Ted Cruz is running. He wants to run.
Yep. Yeah. Steve Moore's radio's coming up on most of these same stations. And Liz Peek is just fine, superlative, and Fox News. It's all wonderful stuff. I'm Kudlow. Down with Mondamiism. Down with Mondamiism. Up with freedom.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.